Good afternoon or good evening, depending on your time zone. My name is Sha-Kiya Gadson, and I am the host of the ListNing Project. Today, I have Mr. Tony. Can you introduce yourself to the listeners, sir?
Hello, everyone. I'm Tony, and looking forward to this great conversation with Shakia.
Yes, I caught him in the middle of work, but I'm very thankful that you came and spent your time with me. So, tell me, what do you think about the Listening Project, and what have you heard of it thus far?
Unfortunately, I haven't heard much about the listening project. Through a friend of mine, he advised me uh, to join, participate in this great event, and I trust him very much. So I'm looking forward to the discussion that we're about to have.
Okay, wonderful. All right, so let's talk about the Listening Project. This is a space that I have created for men to come and share their experiences. It is my belief that if we as a collective get a better understanding of what men truly go through and what you're really thinking about, um, that we can have more dialogue and somehow help things and change the narrative about the way things are heading and why they are the way they are. I don't think you all have enough space for open and honest conversation that leads to um, some type of resolution, or if not a resolution, some type of understanding. So, for the next hour or so, you and I are just going to sit and just have an honest conversation about who you are and your life. And hopefully, my listeners will gain something from it, as I feel like every man has a different story and I feel like it needs to be heard. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay, wonderful. So tell us about yourself,
Oh, let's see. I'm from New York City and born and raised. Thank you, thank you,
fellow
thank you.
hometowner.
That's right. That's right. New York Yankees and Giants, of
Yes.
course. I'm a traditionalist. Let's see. I've traveled the world due to my employment.
Mm-hmm.
So that in itself has given me a perspective that very few of our folks, brothers and sisters from New York City, get exposed to it. I'm very thankful for the opportunities that has provided and
Wonderful.
insight as well.
I agree. Can you tell me a little bit about your upbringing? How would you classify it?
Define classify.
So, did you grow up in a two-parent household? Um, was it very traditional? Um, those type of
Yeah.
things.
I was mostly raised by my grandparents. So
Okay.
both my grandmother and grandfather raised me for the most part. My grandmother was very it was is it was 'cause she's passed a devout Catholic, so I was raised Catholic. So that household. Oh, sorry about that. I was raised that way for most of my life until I became a teenager and went on my own way. Uh, my grandfather was definitely the patriarch. He was the lead of the family, the defender, the provider. So that definitely instilled a lot of those values and the way I live my life and be a supporting husband.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Do you have any children?
I do have three children, all adults. Well, one is half an adult. He's still in college.
Okay, cool, cool. So growing up in New York with grandparents, how does that shape how you see the world, considering um, New York, depending on what time frame you grew up in, could have been very interesting. And grandparents being a little bit older, how did that impact how you were able to move around the city?
Oh no, that's I'm glad you mentioned that because it does depend on what era of New York City you grew up in. I did grow up during the crack uh, pandemic, so it was tough. It's not the Disney New York City that we know today. Um, you won't see the Fort Greene is not the Fort Greene with the $6 billion townhomes. Was much different. Fort Greene was good at night. The same for many other neighborhoods today. White.
Gentrified.
diverse. Yeah, gentrified, right? I was going to say diverse,
No.
but you're
We
right.
can
Just
call
call
it
it
what
what
it
it
is.
is.
Yes,
Call it what it
absolutely.
is. Has become very gentrified. There's a lot of good in that.
Hmm.
It's good that people feel safer to venture out in the city and enjoy the city for all that it provides. It wasn't so much that way when I grew up. It was very, we say segregated, not racially, but just by neighborhoods. Um,
Okay.
if you're from Fort Greene, you go to Flatbush. If you're from Flatbush, you'll go to Bed-Stuy and Pinterest and so forth. So you were very um, always aware of your surroundings and the boundaries, right? If you're going into
Absolutely.
a different neighborhood, you were almost in a state of alertness or hyper alertness because one, everybody knows you're not from the neighborhood.
Right.
And that comes with many challenges, right? And I'm happy to say that today is not so. My kids go there today, and they're hanging out in coffee shops. And,
Very much
um,
city kids.
exactly, like wow, this is what we used to think of Long Island, and now it's in Brooklyn. Uh,
Yes.
so I love it for that aspect. But growing up in that era has uh, definitely prepared me to take on a lot of the challenges. Uh,
I agree.
take on many challenges that you face, even abroad as you're traveling. You go to a different city, just have that state of awareness and alertness that mentally you're like, "Oh, I'm not going to get caught out here. You're always in that state of awareness. For that, I'm thankful that I grew up there. But when you're outside your norm, your neighborhood, or your center of
Okay. So when you are thinking back in your younger years, you said you grew up with Catholic grandparents. Um, how does that impact you, considering most people of melanation? I won't necessarily say black because I don't know your ethnicity or background.
right,
Um, Catholic is not really the norm. More like Baptist and
right,
so how does that play into how you see the world as well? Like I've been to Catholic churches and for my personal opinion, they're very efficient in comparison to going to Baptist churches. You are in and
right,
out within the hour, you get the message and you move it along. But there
right.
are certain strictnesses that kind of impact how freely in terms of judgment and being aware of the world and being worldly, it has impacted that. So how did that play out in your world?
That's a great question. And one key word that you mentioned there is structure. Because of that rigidness to a point, the Catholic upbringing did provide a lot of structure. And I also attended Catholic schools, so that was just instilled in me from a very young age. Everything was almost orchestrated. So, I wake up in the morning, home from school. It was very structured. Have dinner every night at 6 o'clock. You know, homework. You complete your homework until 8 o'clock, and you're in bed no later than 9. So I mean, that's how rigid and disciplined it was. That was back in the day when, yeah, grandma will slap you upside the head if you sleep up, you know. But there was a lot of love with it. Never, although it was rigid, although it was very disciplined, uh, you never felt unloved.
Okay.
Um, so that is one thing that I remember,
Hmm.
and I'll carry to this day. And even today that they're both have passed, um, I am who I am today primarily because of the confidence that they instilled in me. A lot of it
Hmm.
because of the structure, because that structure brings kind of uh, expectations with it uh, and stability, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and it's kind of a sense of a reassurance. Uh, but again, going back to that structure and discipline, growing up Catholic, education was going to school, and I don't know if this is directed towards Catholics holistically, but in our household, you just it was about the complete package, the whole person. Um,
Okay.
I played sports, I played an instrument, and it's not about being the next Michael Jordan or the next musical artist. It's about learning about the world. We had to learn another language that was enforced in our household. Uh, didn't dictate which language you learn, but just, you will learn another language.
Okay.
And we traveled a lot. We traveled a lot through the tri-state area, other states, but uh, so that itself also kind of
That set you apart from your peers that had to, because a lot of people didn't have money or enough money to
right,
move about freely.
right, and we weren't wealthy. That was it was just what the things that they placed value on, right? So I mean, they worked their butts off to send me to Catholic school. Um, and for us to take these vacations, when I say vacations, it's to an amusement park across the river or to Boston or to Philly. It's not like we were going to
Hmm.
Paris
Right. No, I understand.
um, or upstate New York. But is the emphasis on there is more to life than the block,
I
right?
agree. Hmm.
And that is why the emphasis on doing sports, get out there, be the best that you can. It wasn't about getting the medals; it's about doing your best. And the musical instrument is about the discipline that it takes to play an instrument, to learn an instrument, and get be proficient in it. Again, it's not
Hmm.
for you to become a musical artist unless that's what you want to do, but it's about being again, I'll say the word aware, an aware person of what the world has to offer. Music did open that up to me. I love music today, and I listen to a variety of music from classical to rap to rap music. I just love music for what it is. Um, music really, I never really stuck with an instrument. I always found myself going back to that, just appreciating the different sounds and um, just the artistry. I
Okay.
know that's a long answer for your question,
No,
and
no,
I
no.
kind of meandered
You
around it.
no, that it's okay. Like I said, I want your perspective on life. Like some people might talk quicker, some people don't. It's okay. It's all normal and all perfectly fine. Um, so growing up and being raised by grandparents, how did that affect you when you saw your peers who may have grown up with their biological parents?
Bother me.
Okay.
And again, that's probably because of the demographics of the neighborhood. It was random. You had people who were raised by their siblings, so being raised by your grandparents was just a thing. That was my family. That was
Okay.
just the structure of my family. Whereas, my neighbor was raised by his aunt and uncle. My other neighbor would have been raised by their siblings, as I mentioned earlier, and some of them had both parents, mother and father, and some only had the father, and some only had the mothers.
So it
But
was never made to be an issue or never a time and place where it was like, man, the way that I grew up was not necessarily traditional in a sense.
it was my tradition,
Gotcha.
and when I looked at others, that was their tradition. It was never a topic of discussion. Like,
Okay.
why are you being raised by your brother and sister? No, that was never a topic of
Everybody
discussion.
just flowed with it because it worked.
That's just how things work. And maybe it's
Okay.
a New York thing. You don't get into people's business
Very,
subconsciously.
very true.
But that's just how it is. You live with your brother and sister. Okay, cool. And I tell you what, some of those siblings, they were as strict or even more strict than some folks who had traditional
Parents.
parents.
Yes. Okay. So when we talk about going into adolescence or becoming of age as a young man, what does that look like for you? And Were there ever any times where that were like significant for you where it's like, man, this is rough. This is tough for me. Like this coming of age thing is really tough for me.
I think that looking back now, the toughest thing about adolescence was having their grandfather. 'Cause they're much older. Well, they let's say they just don't have the energy to chase you down.
Right. Understood.
Yes, right. Um, and my grandfather was very much, again, he was clearly the leader of the family, uh, but he was a very silent leader. He didn't talk much. Uh, Grandma did all the talking and all the spanking.
Uh, okay.
Yes. Um, but when he spoke, everyone listened. You know,
Mm-hmm.
very wise, highly educated. Uh, so you always wanted to hear what he had to say.
Gotcha.
Um, and when I would do what adolescents do,
Mm-hmm.
he would just calmly sit me down and just speak in anecdotes.
Okay. Got you. All right.
Um,
So it's like
and
you had to figure it out. It's like, okay, read between the lines and what I'm saying to you. Don't repeat this again. Like don't repeat the same action if it wasn't appropriate.
yeah, I mean, you did and it goes back to him being that uber educated individual. Um, you had to pay attention because he wasn't confrontational. He would not never wag his finger at you. It was more like, so you had an interesting day today.
Hmm. Sometimes that's worse than the wagging at the finger or the hitting because
Right.
it's almost like deep seated disappointment. Like, dang, like I really messed up. Okay.
But
All
he's
right.
never said that.
Hmm.
He has never said to me he was disappointed. Again, he spoke in anecdotes. So he will tell of a story of perhaps a situation that he was in and how he overcame that challenge. And you had to extract from that the lesson that he was
Okay.
conveying.
Do you feel like that was not saying appropriate because that's not really the word that I want to use, but do you think we give too much credit to young people, young men in terms of what we say to them and the lessons that we expect for them to glean from it? Are we going over their heads too much and expecting too much sometimes because we speak in experience and anecdotes?
I think it depends on the individual. You have to read the room, know your audience, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he thought I was equipped to to speak to be spoken to that way. Uh, a lot of times, and we didn't have ChatGPT back then, so I had to really sit down and contemplate what the heck was he talking about.
Like, I think I got it.
I think I understand what he's talking about. I think it depends on the individual. It's very situational. Yeah, a lot of it depends on the individual and that is receiving the information. And I would say also how the person who's delivering the information. The method is key to someone one understanding it and two um, applying to it. If complying is the right word, or maybe being receptive to it.
Got you.
In my
Okay.
case, I think because of the way we were raised, it was expected. So we always knew, oh, okay, Grandpa is going to give us a story, and we have to think deep. Probably part of the punishment was trying to figure out what it is.
Right. It wasn't just going to be handed to you.
Right.
Understood. So, did you have siblings? You said we.
Yes, my brother and I have a younger brother.
Okay. Oh, older brother. Okay. So that
Younger. I'm
comes
the
with
I'm
its
the oldest.
right. So that's what I'm saying. So
Oh,
like
sorry.
that comes with its own set of challenges being the older brother. Do you feel like your way of growing up, how did you navigate sexuality, sex, intimacy with older grandparents that were religious? How does that play out for you?
Non-existent.
That can't be the truth. What?
Non-existent. My grandmother never spoke to me about sex. My grandfather never spoke to me about sex. Talked to me about politics. Actually, my grandmother spoke
Mm.
about politics too. Um, yes, never had a discussion about sex.
So you were flying blind for quite some time.
Quite some time. Yep, like many of us.
Right. Okay. So did you in turn impart wisdom to your brother once you found out like making mistakes, or was that like part of the you just got to figure it out kind of deal?
Yeah, that's really how it was back then. Is there was a lot of puffing up your chest, and what we thought being a man was sexually. So I'm sure my younger brother learned some of that from me just by observing me. Uh,
Hmm.
and good with
Right.
uh, sports and everything comes with volleyball as well. So, all uh, all that, like, what we thought defined a man.
Hmm.
It's all part of the learning process.
Got you. So, in comparison to what you learned from where you came from versus what you learned from your line of work now, how has that shifted or changed things?
So definitely, it's afforded me to see the world in a different from a different lens. And as a result of that, I was able to always having the foundation of growing up in New York City during that era, to kind of fortify my shield. Um,
Hmm.
and I would say even better equipped to deal with various situations. One, because of knowledge that I'm exposed to, so learn more about how people truly are around the world, cultures where customs actually originates. Why people
Hmm.
live the way they do. It's a way of life. That brings a great deal of comfort to you because now you're able to be more relatable. You're
Gotcha.
more open-minded, uh, and I believe it gives you the opportunity to not only having a better understanding, but also the drive to want to learn more about the
Gotcha.
world.
Okay. In your line of work, how do you feel like it helps or hinders um, mental health regarding men?
Wow, that's a loaded one, huh?
Yeah.
Let me think on that one for a minute. Well, I'm in a very male-dominated industry. It, I don't think you have to have a mental toughness, and that mental toughness it's an expectation. Weakness or the perception of weakness is frowned upon. So I think my upbringing aided in that. Having whether or not you're never scared, right? Growing up in Brooklyn, you're never scared. You're always the bravest, the boldest. Um, so it was easy to keep that shield up, or that facade up.
Mm-hmm. But when does that facade get to come off? When do you become comfortable enough saying, actually, I'm not the bravest, or I am going through something and I need a little bit of help? Like, when does that kick in, if ever, for men?
I think once you have enough trust in the people around you, that they ensure you that it's okay to be vulnerable around them.
Gotcha.
That's when the shield comes down, and you're able to say, "Brother, sister, I need
Okay. What does what are some key things that you or in your experience that you feel like someone should look out for? Like if I were your trusted friend, what are some key things that you would want me to look out for or notice about you that would say, hey, I'm in a little bit of distress, or I'm in over my head, or, would someone know, like, hey, this is this is absolutely outside of his norm. If the idea is, I'm a man, I've got to be a provider, I've got to look a certain way, what are some indicators?
The people who know you best, um, they can pick up on the signs. Uh, and I'm not gonna speak on my characteristics directly, but say I am, very very talkative and out, very charismatic. Suddenly, I am not that extrovert that everyone knows of. The
Hmm.
people closest to me will pick up on that. Uh, they will know just based on the things that I say, my word choice. The same with the things that you do. If you're one who's very active, likes to go on hikes or kayaking or rock climbing, and suddenly you become this, you just kind of into your shell, it's more of a enclosed. Your dormitory, what they will know there's something wrong. Again, if you're an academic, suddenly you no longer, lost in your books or experimenting on something, whatever it may be, you're known to involve. Those are small cues. People closest to you, I can tell when something is wrong with.
Hmm. Okay. And the reason why I asked that question is because I have found that throughout my life's journeys, there have been times where I felt like I would have noticed the cues. Um, but people get caught up in their own lives, or they don't realize that some of the things that they have may have said um, actually contradict what they were thinking or attempting to do. Like, case in point, if someone um, I know is going through like a medical situation, and in my mind, I give them um, another incentive to live or get healthy or do better. um, in my mind, I would think that that's like an uplifting thing, but I have found that that actually sounds very selfish, and it's like you should be focusing directly on that person and what they're going through. So I know where it's like the perception is that the people around you would know, but oftentimes we really don't. We know what we think we know, but we don't really understand how what we're saying may negatively impact you or keep you from being honest with us in the future. So um, that's the reason why I asked the question.
No, and I think both can be true. Yeah, you're absolutely right because you never truly know what's going on in a person's life, no matter how close you are with them. Even it could be even your spouse, because we are individuals,
Right.
and there are things that are going on that, for whatever reason, they just don't want to share, whether they're embarrassed or they don't think it's an issue
Mm. Okay.
until it just consumes them. That snowball effect, and it becomes a mound um, that just weighs them down until at some point it just spills over. And that's when you see some of the actions come to life.
Understood. So do you think that it is healthy for men to assume the role of provider, protector, um, oftentimes before they can really provide and protect? What are your thoughts on that?
Ooh, well, good one. Um, I think again that's a cultural expectation. I think
Hmm.
today there are some men. I don't want to say most because I really can't put any to it to support it. I think there's some men, a good amount of men who are comfortable not being the provider, um,
Mm.
and, and that goes with the trust, right? You can't have a spouse or partner who expects you to be the provider simply because you're a man. If there's that trust, and I'll say respect as well, um, in the relationship where it's okay for you to have that more domestic role versus the traditional, I need to go out and make that money, put a roof over your head, uh, that macho provider.
Mm-hmm.
Really, truly trust in that relationship. It has to be sincere. You can't tell the partner, yes, it's okay for you to stay home and raise the kids and not go out there and be the professional wife role. And when they do that, you're not supportive.
Gotcha.
That's where the uh, chaos will begin and the lack of trust, and ultimately the relationship will just not.
How do you feel about men and money? Do you feel like um, there are spaces where men use money for power play? And what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think that stems from?
Well, it stems from the roles that men are the leaders and women's places in the kitchen. I think that's where that stems from. Even though my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom, quote unquote, um, she never acted like one. She ran the finances, and
Hmm.
my grandfather treated her as an equal. So I never saw her as inferior to my grandfather. I always saw them uh, make decisions together. She never deferred to him out of respect in her upbringing, yes, as he was the symbolic head of the household, but I always heard them have discussions on major issues.
Okay, that's very healthy.
Yeah, it was a partnership. Um, and I carried myself today as well. So where that comes from, I think um, it just dates back to the beginning of time. It was a male-dominated world, and for the most part, it still is. Some people have evolved and looked at uh, women as partners instead of inferior or subservient. Not everyone has evolved.
Okay, that's fair. So when we are talking about men and women, um, your children, are they both genders?
Yes,
Are they okay? Do you feel like you've raised them according to their gender or how they are as individuals?
both.
Okay.
Um, I have daughters as well as a son, and um, I think men, dads, fathers just have a soft spot for their girls,
Hmm.
and, and daughters love their dads. That's why they call them daddies.
True.
And my son and I, we have a great relationship now, but there was some friction early on, and you can chalk that up to I don't know, being a mama's boy, a little complex there. I was
Okay.
blame
Okay.
it on
I mean,
Oedipus complex, so who knows? But I think that's natural, and today, we exercise together. I mean, that's my boy. You know,
okay.
we have a
And the
beautiful
reason why,
relationship.
yeah, the reason why I asked that question is because a lot of men, when you talk to them, they were missing um, that nurturing aspect when it came time for them to raise their children or be around children. And, I kind of wonder if you grew up in a household that was, relatively healthy. Did that transfer over to your children where your son was able to be nurtured by both parents, or did you take on that stern, silent type and mom was the nurturer?
I would say yes, definitely. I was very almost a mirror image to what I observed my grandfather to be.
Mhm.
And I've learned over the years to be more nurturing to all my kids. And I didn't treat the girls any different than I treated my son. Um, it's it's just the way I was raised. just came to fruition um, when raising my own children, and that's something that I actually had to learn to be more um, open. I was gonna say the word available, but it's not the word available. I guess just nourishing is probably more like it. I was definitely the disciplinarian, and what I mean by disciplinarian is again going back to that structure,
Mm-hmm.
school, homework, you know, um, sports, piano, violin, bed, you know.
My
Um,
goodness. Really?
oh yes, throughout the years, and I mean, yeah, that's exactly how it was with all three of them. You know, so even today, you see a lot of that in their approach to school and their respective careers.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some good to it, but yes, I had to learn to be a better parent
Gotcha.
because there were times I can see looking back that I may have been um, less receptive to their needs versus
Okay.
what I thought they needed to be successful.
Understood. Would you consider yourself a good friend?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Tell me what that looks like.
My friends know that I am loyal, and they can call me anytime, literally
Okay.
anytime. I mean, we're having this discussion today because of a friend who reached
Right.
out to me, and no questions asked. Got it. I had no idea what I was getting into, but the simple fact that he said, "Hey, are you interested in doing this?" Blah 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 blah. I'm like, sure. Anyone else, I would have been asking a lot of questions. And what is this exactly? What am I getting into? What are you trying to sign me up for? Um, but knowing who it came from, there's no questions asked,
Oh, that's
and it's
pretty cool.
reciprocal.
Mm,
I can call that individual and ask them for anything, no questions asked.
nice. Okay. So, being a friend, if you find that one of your friends is doing something that you would find questionable, whether it be morally or just out of what you know of them, how do men go about handling that? Or what is your perception of how men go about handling those things?
I think, especially among men who are close friends, they'll have a real heart to heart. Yeah, it could be as eloquent or proficient as get very psychological on them, or you can just get a real brother on them and say, "Bruh." You know,
Because I've seen from like a lot of younger men, uh, I want to say younger, meaning early 20s to maybe mid to late 30s. They have an issue with that. They are more likely to kind of watch their friends flounder or go through something and not involve themselves. Whereas, like, like he's a grown man, he'll figure it out, or I don't want to get in his business too much. Or so, where do you think the line comes in where it's, what, no, like that's my brother, I want to step in and help them out?
I think there's a
Pardon me.
lot. There are a lot of variables that go into that. It could be. I can definitely, and I have seen this growing up in New York City, where somebody would say just that, like, "Hey, man, he's a grown man, she's a grown woman. You do you, right?" But in that same environment, I've seen the opposite. When somebody pull you to the side, one of your close friends, and say, "Hey, bro, what's going on? What are you doing that for? Hey, sis, talk to me. You don't need to be there with that. You don't need to be out there." So it really depends on the situation, and I truly believe it depends on the foundation of that relationship.
Okay.
If that's your ride or die, I think they're going to be brutally honest with you, and they'll let you know because again, that vulnerability that you have with each other, they know everything about you. They've seen all of you, right? So they are comfortable in checking you, just as they are comfortable expecting you to check them.
Hmm.
And that's what I expect from my friends, and I'm sure they expect that from me.
Gotcha.
I, if I have a friend who's, I don't know, doing something out of the ordinary, I'm going to say, "Do you really need to do that? What's going on?" And that's probably an indicator that something is wrong, right?
Right.
And that will actually stimulate the conversation to find out what's the root of the matter.
Gotcha. Okay. I only got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
But thank you very much. I appreciate all your time and effort in this. This was a great conversation. If I were to give you the stick for the day, what is something that you feel like you would give to society that would help them to understand men better or come
Ooh,
to the table in a more supportive way for you or for men?
hmm, that is that's a heavy one right there.
Is it?
Goodness gracious, giving me the stick. You know, I'm from the county of Kings, so I prefer a crown. If you give me the crown for the
Okay. Okay. If you were king for the day. Okay. If you are king for the day, sir.
well, ma'am, I would say we just need to talk more. You know, be brutally honest with one another. I think we've lost that. And I know it's easy to blame it on technology, on social media. I mean, there's a lot of goodness in social media, but uh, you know, pick up the phone and actually call someone and speak to someone instead of texting them. Um, like with my kids, you know, I will FaceTime them. No, I want to see you. I'm not gonna just, you
Hmm.
know, if I have the ability to see you, you know, I want to see you. I want to talk to you. I'm not only gonna text you. There are times when yes, everyone is busy, so yes, a text will suffice. But um, yeah, I get on them for not. If 2 days go by and I don't hear from them, they, they,
Okay.
they're getting a scolding. Um, but no, I think we need to understand that we're still getting past this persona that men have to be the head of the household. You know, a warrior dad. I mean, we just need to talk more. You know,
Mm.
be human first. Put all that other stuff aside. Just be human first and listen to one another. I think um, yeah, I think it's as simple as that. Just talk and listen more.
So, how do we get women to listen more without?
Judgment.
I didn't, not necessarily judgment, because I really feel like a lot of women are misinformed as
Hmm.
well. Um, we struggle with the balance of power and independence. Because if I'm being honest with you, most of us have issues with trusting men to be the power and do right with that power. So even if we're like, yeah, we want you to be the provider protector, there is still a part of a lot of us that is still very questionable about, if I leave that space open for you, will you do the right thing with it when I'm under your tutelage, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, and you're right that you're making yourself extremely vulnerable to that person, right? You're literally almost
Yes.
handing your life over. I am trusting you to take care of everything else because I am going to do, you know, everything else.
Hmm.
I'm going to love you. I'm going to take care of everything. I'm going to support your every endeavor. Um, yes, that is powerful in itself for someone to open themselves so much. That is like extreme love. That is a love that you normally only get from a parent because a
Right.
parent is gonna sacrifice everything for their children, right? So when you turn around as an adult and surrender yourself essentially to someone, yes, that is tough. You should only do that with someone that truly loves you, because
Okay.
that person who truly loves you will understand that. Many young people, I don't think you learn something like that until or appreciate it until much older
Much
in
later.
life,
Yes.
much later in life. I don't know how you instill that in someone unless one, it's in their nature,
Hmm.
both being, you know, the recipient of it and the provider of such love, and or have seen it in action growing up.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. And adding to that, I really feel like, especially in your line of work, people don't really, everybody's kids and they grow up, quite expeditiously. People get married at 20, people get married at 19 for all different reasons. What you just said is like that comes later on in life, but ultimately people feel like a lot of people, I mean, maybe it's shifting now, but they want a partner. They want somebody to be with for forever. So just the idea that somebody is willing and wanting to share their life with them forever. A lot of people jump into that very prematurely, thinking it's going to be one way, and they don't realize that you've actually got to grow up with this person, and they become a stranger multiple times over the course of that relationship. So it's very tough.
Very tough. Two distinct individuals, um, like you said, growing up together, and even if you're growing up together, you still have two different lives. Um,
Yes.
you have life span, um, goals, right? Um, those goals may or may not include the person that you're with for
Yes.
different reasons.
Yes. I just finished reading The Alchemist.
Ah,
Um,
book.
yes. And it really got me to thinking down this little rabbit hole where I've kind of wondered, where is it appropriate for men that are on their life's journey or in different various stages of their life's journey for them to travel alone as they go through those stages, so that it isn't, I'm trying to go through this life journey, but I also have to factor in being a dad, being a husband, being a friend, being this. Like, is there a level of isolation that needs to happen in order for that to see itself fully out?
We are by nature social creatures, but I think there is room for you to have alone time. You have to have
Mhm.
some time to reflect, to kind of recharge. Unless you're just an extreme extrovert and you just feed off of having people around you, and you just have to have that all the time. But I think everyone needs some time to have that uh, opportunity to just kind of reflect.
So yes, I agree with you. I
Right.
also, but I wonder, is there a little bit more of a need for men to do it? Because once you have a village underneath you, the margin for error is real small when, or the feeling is that the margin of error is real small when you're making a decision or you're doing this or you're doing that. So, in my opinion, I feel like it's slightly more important for men to have that space because, the stakes are, whether they are um, actually higher or it is perceived to be higher. Once you make a decision for the collective as a man, I feel like it is looked at with a lot more scrutiny than a woman.
Interesting. Now, wouldn't you think that that in itself is uh, falling in line with the perception that a male's decision weighs heavier than a female's decision?
I do only because, and and this is just coming from a lot of reflection, a lot of um, mistakes,
Right.
and just looking at the world around me and just being honest about what happens. um as a woman, I can make mistakes. I can do a lot of various amounts of things that don't add up to what my intentions were. And overall, society is going to look at me and give me a level of grace. Even as a Black woman, and as much as we're not necessarily in the highest of pecking order in how people look at us, at the end of the day, I am still a woman, and overall society is going to say, okay, she made a mistake, it's okay. But men, it's almost like, to me, at ages where it's not really realistic, you don't get that grace, even from the people that know that you might not be prepared to make that kind of decision. The level of grace that you get to make those mistakes is very slim. So,
No, you're probably onto something because that in itself, if I may use your your example, let's call it your theory. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that in itself is probably the reason why some men stress about their status in life and their ability to be that provider. Um, and then they wonder whether or not what they're providing is sufficient. Now you're measuring yourself against other men, and then the race continues. So he has this type of car, my car. Oh, he bought my
Right.
wife a fur coat. My wife needs to get a fur coat, and so on and so on. Where does it stop?
I don't think it does, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Um, or it stops when a person actually hits a wall where they break down, whether it's physically or mentally, because they've put this unrealistic expectation on themselves. There's nothing wrong with goals, but I feel like when you're shooting for the same planet as the next guy next to you, and you have no idea where his starting point is,
right.
or what has gone into his decision making, or what he's had to sacrifice, and you just jump in because you feel like that's your litmus for success or greatness, or it's a really dangerous rabbit hole. I think that's
Absolutely.
why a lot of men don't take care of themselves like they're supposed to. They break down, they have midlife crises and leave their families, pick up one day and just disappear, and you're like, well, what the heck happened? I think they've reached that apex where they can't go any further. They've broken themselves, but nobody knew that they were breaking themselves.
Right. Is there any way you think that whether it's a spouse or a significant other can ease them of that pressure by informing them that it is not necessary to constantly strive for greater? Maybe striving for greater is not the best way to phrase that, but to be in such a rat race.
Um, yes and no. I feel like if you have a spouse or a partner that that instills in you that you are enough and that they care about you being there and being present more than the tangible things, I think that that may help with a person that is not so ingrained in them from other traumas or other things that they're trying to measure their life against that nobody knows about. So like if you have these holes in your life that nobody really knows how deep they go because you've never brought them up or you never spoken about them, that's a challenge within yourself that no matter what your spouse tells you, they can't compete with that because they don't know, how deep that well goes. But if, you and your spouse have a real clear conversation about what it is that you both bring to the table and how they see you and how you're showing up or how they would like for you to show up, I think that that makes it easier for them to say, hey, you've been kind of pushing yourself a little bit too much. Let's go on vacation, or you go on vacation, or you open up this space for them to go talk to somebody, go do this, go do that. But when there's like a wall that your partner doesn't know about, it's hard for them to, jump in and give you sound advice and you listen to it because you're always listening to the other voices in your head.
That's very profound. That's awesome.
Yeah. Listen, I've done a lot of mistakes and messing up, so sometimes you learn a little bit along the way. And, this is kind of why I'm doing this project, because I really do feel like in those mistakes, you learn a lot, but you've got to want to learn from those mistakes. And I have a son. And so while he has a dad, I feel like there are also lessons that you can learn from men that you just meet. Um, and it's all important. And, I wish that his dad, you know, takes keys and starts talking to men and, just get a different perspective on the world. Um, you're always in learning mode if you're growing.
Absolutely.
So that's where we are with this. Um, So, my last question for you is, given that you have just been on the ListNing project, how would you suggest that I get this message out to other men so that we can broaden the scope and get more people involved, so that you all know that you're not alone and that there is a place for you to just come and even just listen to other men speak their truth? How would you go about doing that?
definitely start with people that you trust. You know, making sure that um, you're getting you're gonna get individuals who are gonna be honest with you. That's the only way this works is when people are honest and not just painting another persona, you know, to again fill a role or to meet expectations. The only way we truly develop, grow, is through uh, very honest conversations, being vulnerable around each other, and that will probably take some time, um, depending on who you speak with. And at some point, my recommendation is probably having a panel. You know, three individuals, um, and if possible, different age groups, and you can instantly get the different perspectives, right, based on their age.
Mm-hmm.
And even within that panel, those individuals will learn from each other based on the
Right.
discussions that they have. And of course, the audience will learn from it as well. Yeah, I mean, talking and being vulnerable is so key to everything. You know, once you chip away that facade, uh, and get to the real person inside, you learn so much and you appreciate so much. And that person too appreciates more, and receives a lot more.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for your time, and hopefully you could get back to whatever you were doing since I caught you.
No, it's okay, and
uh,
I hope that it was fruitful and helpful to you. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I apologize for the early inconvenience. I
Oh
know it's
no,
late.
no, 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 no worries at all. This was great. Like I said, I will make time for this project. I will make time for this, and I want a good quality interaction. So this
Okay.
worked well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.